The thermos of chamomile tea was still warm in Beatrice's hands, a comforting weight that momentarily stilled the growing dread in her stomach. She watched the gap where Serena and Marcus had vanished, a strange, hushed corner of the Black Rock crossing platform, tucked behind a feed store that had been shuttered for years. They had only promised to check the tickets, a task usually handled right at the entrance, yet they had walked toward the far end and disappeared completely. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The small group of other passengers, a couple and a man reading a paperback, boarded the restored old locomotive. Beatrice listened to the soft screech of the train pulling away, an isolated sound in the vast countryside, and felt a sudden cold certainty. The sweetness in her daughter-in-law's voice, the tired avoidance in her son's eyes, none of it was random. She stood, the low afternoon sun catching the rails, and walked toward the emptiness, hoping desperately to see their car. But the lot was abandoned. And taped neatly beneath the edge of the wooden bench where she had been waiting was a small, folded note. The paper was thin, too light to hold the crushing gravity of the 6 words written inside. Beatrice had received the invitation that Wednesday morning, delivered in Serena's trademark tone. Sweet, careful, and unervingly perfect. It was a Mother's Day surprise. A gentle train ride through the Willow Valley, complete with vintage cabins and soft music. Beatrice hadn't spent meaningful time with her son, Marcus, and Serena in months, relegated to polite, quick exchanges. When Serena used the word healing, Beatrice felt a flicker of hope, not because she trusted the motive, but because she desperately wanted to feel still a mother, still wanted. Marcus hadn't called, only texting 2 words later that night. Can't wait. Preparing for the trip, Beatrice packed ginger candies, a leather journal she hadn't touched in weeks, and her lavender scarf, a relic from her last trip with her late husband. The next morning, Serena was dressed in a soft yellow dress, her scarf tied like a flight attendant. Marcus remained glued to his phone, nodding vaguely when asked about work, his eyes showing a profound weariness. The drive was heavy with unspoken tension. Black Rock Crossing was tiny, smelling of damp wood and distant rain. After handing Beatrice the thermos of tea, Serena kissed her cheek, a gesture that now felt chillingly rehearsed, and walked off with Marcus toward the ticket agent. Beatrice waited, watching the tracks shimmer. When she finally stood and followed them, finding only the silence of the countryside, the weight of the note crushed her. She unfolded the paper in her trembling hand. If she still has her mind, she'll find her way back. The words settled like stones in her chest. She read it once, then again, her fingers gripping the fragile paper. She didn't tear it, she folded it slowly, treating it like proof. Proof that this was not a lapse in memory, or a missed connection, but a deliberate act. The train was gone, their car was gone. She was stranded. No phone, no purse, just the scarf and the cooling tea. She walked inside the station, a space barely large enough for 2 benches and a blinking vending machine. The attendant was out for lunch. There was no one to turn to. Beatrice moved from sitting to standing, fighting the buzz in her knees that signaled mounting emotion. She took a deep breath, not to calm down, but to anchor herself. I was not confused. I was not lost. I had been left. The sun shifted, turning the initial warmth of the platform into a hollow feeling. She walked out, following the main road. Gravel gave way to cracked sidewalk, then dirt. Miles blurred beneath her feet as the houses thinned out and the landscape stretched wide like a forgotten book. Her legs began to tremble as the sun dipped toward the horizon. She stopped near a faded green gas station, leaning against the side wall to steady herself. Pickup truck pulled up. A man in a flannel shirt, who moved slowly as if his joints were more memory than motion, stepped out. He glanced at her, nodded, and began filling his tank. As he walked past her toward the store entrance, he paused, watching her with a look of recognition, not pity. "You from around here?" he asked. Beatrice met his gaze. "I was left at the station," she said simply. He nodded immediately. "I know the one. I used to work there before they cut hours. You need a ride somewhere." She accepted, knowing she had no other choice. His name was Arthur. He asked no questions, allowing the comforting quiet to fill the space. For the first time all day, Beatrice didn't feel invisible. Arthur avoided the highway, choosing back roads lined with leaning fence posts and tall grass. He drove carefully, glancing her way every few minutes, checking that she was still present, still grounded. She eventually told him her name, Beatrice. By the time they reached his modest house, the sky was dimming. The front steps creaked as she entered. He led her to an old recliner by the window and vanished into the kitchen. Arthur returned with black coffee and a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. She ate slowly. Every bite was a stark reminder of the long, empty day. He offered no details, just kindness, and later set up a cot in the spare room. Beatrice slept poorly, listening to the wind and running the events through her mind. The phone left behind, the mumbled excuses, the chilling note. There was zero possibility of misinterpretation. This was malice, precisely executed. The next morning, Arthur drove her home. They rode in silence, punctuated only by the soft guitar strumming from the radio. When they reached her driveway, Beatrice hesitated. The house looked unchanged, but everything felt profoundly wrong, as if she no longer belonged. Arthur gave her no advice, only a folded note with his number. If you ever need someone to remember what really happened, I'm around. The house was too quiet. She unlocked the door. The faint smell of her lavender diffuser had faded, replaced by something subtle but unsettling. The kitchen chairs were slightly moved. The hallway mirror was smudged, small signs indicating someone had been there with non-benevolent intentions. In her bedroom, she found a drawer cracked open. Her legal file folders were rearranged, and documents like her power of attorney and health proxy forms were scattered. Some papers were clearly missing or replaced. Her safe was still locked, but she noticed subtle recent scratches near the keyhole. She sat down, the tea kettle whistling faintly from the kitchen, though she hadn't turned it on. Beatrice understood now. She wasn't merely abandoned, she had been targeted. Her attention immediately went to her study. The locked drawer containing personal papers also bore faint scratches. Inside, the crucial envelope labeled Maplewood Estate Property Deed had been moved, the seal loosened, though not broken. Her heartbeat remained calm, oddly steady. She moved to her desktop computer and opened her banking application. After inputting the security questions and two-step verification, the confirmation appeared. Serena M. Givens had been added under access permissions 3 days prior. No call, no discussion, no sign permission. The name should not have been there. Closing the laptop, Beatrice sat in her armchair, recalling the forced sympathy in Serena's smile the week before. The kind of look people give, just before they move you somewhere quiet. She sat for nearly an hour, not crying, not raging, just breathing. She rose and went to the hall closet, retrieving her old travel bag. Inside, she placed a fresh notebook, a pen, and the burner phone she had bought months ago, the one Serena assumed she had discarded when offering to switch her to a family plan. Zipping the bag, she placed it under her bed. Tomorrow the preparations would begin. The next morning the air was thick with tension. Beatrice opened the fresh notebook, writing the date at the top corner. She charted her observations, keeping the entries factual and unemotional, like charting a patient's vitals. Front porch light was on upon arrival. Draw lock scratched. Envelope seal loosened. Bank account access changed. Serena M. Givens added. An hour later, she tucked the notebook beneath a loose floorboard in the hallway, a hiding place known only to her and her late husband. That afternoon Marcus called. His voice was soft, worn down, like he was always apologizing. He asked if she needed anything. She told him she was fine. He mentioned dropping by the next day. Marcus arrived around 4 p.m., bringing soup. He sat awkwardly, his gaze lowered. "I'm glad you're back safe, Mom," he said. Beatrice thanked him but avoided his eyes. He asked vaguely about the trip, and she answered vaguely, letting the silence stretch. "Serena's been worried about you," he finally offered. Beatrice turned, offering a practiced, gentle smile. She's kind, she replied, then turned back to the kitchen drawer. He left after 20 minutes. After his car faded, Beatrice checked the front door. Earlier, she had placed a small sticker just behind the trim. It was peeled, confirming someone had checked the lock from the outside. That night Serena came, bringing warm banana bread. I missed our chats, she smiled. Beatrice returned the smile slowly. While getting more tea, Beatrice watched from the corner of her eye as Serena's gaze lingered toward the hallway coat closet, the spot where travel documents used to be kept. Beatrice intentionally dropped a spoon, and as she bent to retrieve it, she saw Serena momentarily rise and step toward the hallway before catching herself and sitting back down with a soft laugh. Beatrice updated her notebook. Marcus visit, soup, eyes avoiding contact. Serena visit, looked toward coat closet, distracted when alone. The following morning, she pulled out her old, dusty tape recorder. She tested it. The soft click and mechanical hum were surprisingly comforting. She left it charging beneath a folded towel in the guest room, the same room Serena often entered when she insisted on helping to sort papers. Beatrice began moving slightly slower, allowing minor lapses in design. A rattling cup, a paused thought, a furrowed brow. You've been a little forgetful lately, haven't you? Serena said gently one afternoon while refilling the tea tin. Beatrice offered a faint smile. Have I? We all do, Mom, Serena said, patting her hand. Serena mentioned memory again, gently framed, tested reaction, Beatrice noted later. She also started leaving fake reminders in odd places, once sticking a note about turning off the stove onto the bathroom mirror. 2 days later, Serena saw it, looked concerned, and then composed herself. Beatrice observed Serena taking a photograph of the note when she thought she wasn't being watched. It was working. On Friday, Serena brought a new planner, claiming it would help Beatrice keep track of things. Inside was a pamphlet about support services for aging adults. Beatrice accepted it, then excused herself to the kitchen where the tape recorder was hidden beneath the stove drawer. Listening back later, Beatrice heard Serena's voice. Marcus and I just want her to be safe. Once we file, it's only temporary. We'll keep it quiet. File what? She rewound and played it again, confirming their intent. She copied the audio onto a USB drive labeled June Visit, and hid it inside an old sewing tin Serena had gifted her. Beatrice reread her entries. The patterns were clear. The visits, the misplaced glances, the assistance with mail and files, it all pointed toward a calculated takeover. She charted Marcus's silences and the new look of calculation in his eyes. She was no longer just reacting, she was preparing. The following Sunday, Beatrice invited Serena for tea. She brewed chamomile with lavender and placed 2 ginger cookies on a rarely used porcelain plate. The setting was deceptively warm. Beatrice had placed a recorder underneath the cushion of the armchair Serena always sat in. Serena came in, cheerfully discussing her students and Marcus's work. She eventually brought up the planner. I've started tracking a few things for you, Serena said, her fingers brushing her teacup rim. Doctor renewals, just little things. Marcus and we might help with managing your appointments soon. There's a process for that. Beatrice nodded. Sounds important, she said softly. Then, as casually as if discussing groceries, Serena delivered the line. We've already started filing for temporary guardianship, just until things settle. It's what's best for you. Beatrice's heart slowed rather than raced, as she simulated dabbing her nose with a tissue. Later, after Serena left, Beatrice played back the recording. Serena's voice was clear, calm, and confirmed their action. That night, Beatrice did something she hadn't done in 5 years. She picked up the phone and dialed Vivian Jones. Vivian's voice was steady and crisp, just as Beatrice remembered from their old yoga class. When Beatrice explained what had happened, Vivian's tone hardened. You've got documents? Vivian asked. I do, and recordings, Beatrice confirmed. Good. Do not confront them. We'll start with a freeze. The next day, Beatrice met Arthur at the local diner. He listened to her account without interruption. He then pushed his plate aside and offered a solution. I've got an extra lockbox at home and a spare key. Beatrice handed him the USB drive, the notebook, and a sealed envelope containing her most recent will. He pocketed them without ceremony, then simply talked about the weather. There was no drama, only two people quietly executing a plan. Beatrice slept through the night for the first time in weeks. She met Vivian Jones downtown at the Senior Legal Center, which smelled of polished wood and old paper. Vivian wore a gray blazer and flats like armor. Beatrice handed over the evidence, the USB, the notebook, and a printed copy of the will. Vivian confirmed that Arthur held the backup. Beatrice relayed everything: the station, the note, the stolen papers, and Serena's calm discussion of guardianship. Coercive elder abuse, Vivian stated quietly. It's more common than you think, especially with a well-meaning son and a strategic daughter-in-law. Vivian presented a legal form, a preemptive protective injunction. This form would not accuse them but would legally freeze any attempts by Serena and Marcus to override Beatrice's autonomy or gain control until a hearing. Beatrice signed it. We'll file this under seal, Vivian promised. Marcus and Serena won't know it exists until they try to act. Vivian emphasized the need to maintain her normal routines, making them believe nothing has changed. Beatrice stayed in Arthur's spare room, which smelled of pine soap. He ensured she had hot tea and oatmeal, never asking questions. He even added a new lock to his back door. Marcus called breezy and cheerful, mentioning that Serena had set up a meeting with someone at the bank to go over things. Beatrice calmly told him she trusted their judgment and was grateful for their concern. That's good, Mom, he said. We just want to make sure everything's in order. The next morning Vivian called. The court date was set, quietly, privately, 3 weeks away. Until then, Beatrice had to play the part, appear uncertain, say thank you for the soup, and let them believe the narrative they had constructed. She went to brunch with them, laughing at Serena's stories and asking about the garden. That evening, she caught Serena glancing into her office again. Beatrice offered tea. Serena declined, saying she was tired. Beatrice returned to Arthur's house that night. She wasn't angry or sad, she was steady. The board had changed, and they didn't even know it. Marcus arrived unannounced just after noon the next day. Beatrice dried her hands from watering the porch ferns and let him in. He held a paper bag from her favorite bakery. They sat in the sunroom. Marcus started with small talk, then leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He asked if she felt forgetful, citing Serena's observation that Beatrice had misplaced her keys. Beatrice confirmed it had happened once, but she found them immediately after. He nodded, as if her small admission proved his point. Then he asked about the passcode to her online banking. Beatrice looked at him for a long moment before answering. She said she had written it down somewhere but couldn't recall it instantly. Marcus visibly relaxed, his expression softening a fraction. He quickly shifted topics, mentioning Serena was talking to a consultant about simplifying things, just in case Beatrice needed help managing bills. His tone was casual, but the words were clearly rehearsed. Beatrice asked if he was all right. He hesitated, admitting that his work had become unstable and the market was shifting. There was the crack. Beatrice nodded with understanding, and Marcus offered a grateful relief. He then told her gently that he and Serena were talking about future planning, and that some paperwork would arrive in the mail. When Beatrice asked if it was about her medical directives, he replied, "Yes, among other things," adding that it was so they could act in your best interest. In that phrase, Beatrice saw the completed distance. Marcus, her son, had crossed the line, convincing himself she needed protection or perhaps worse, that she wouldn't notice. He wasn't checking on her. He was measuring her capacity. That night, Beatrice texted Vivian from Arthur's phone, insisting they accelerate the timeline. Marcus was now complicit, which changed everything. The next morning before sunrise, Beatrice was packed. She took only one suitcase, her notebooks, the thumb drive, and a small canvas bag containing her vital documents, birth certificate, social security card, and the legal folder Vivian had created. The furniture, the house, the porcelain Serena had always hated. All of it stayed behind, an old shell. Arthur picked her up just after 7 a.m. He didn't ask the destination, simply confirming the coffee was hot. They drove north, past the county line, to a small, quiet, anonymous neighborhood where Arthur's late wife's sister had maintained a storage house. The small one-story house was clean and safe. Beatrice's first act was placing the notebook beside the bed and the key deep in her purse. She called Vivian, who had already prepared the documents. A petition to freeze all legal changes related to her estate, an injunction against unauthorized guardianship petitions, and a temporary block on Marcus and Serena's access to her accounts. Beatrice granted permission to file immediately. That evening, Arthur brought dinner in Tupperware. Before he left, Beatrice gave him a second thumb drive containing every note, document, and recording she had compiled. "If anything happens to me," she told him, "this goes to Vivian." He nodded, understanding the gravity. That night, Beatrice slept soundly, no longer waiting for explanations. She had stopped waiting for them to act. Now they would be reacting to her. The bank manager recognized Serena instantly. Marcus followed her, polished and calm. They had made an appointment using Beatrice's name. Their plan was simple. Marcus would claim Beatrice was struggling. Serena would present a letter citing mental confusion and suggesting temporary guardianship. What they didn't know was that Vivian Jones had sent a certified letter 3 days earlier. It included the court injunction, a list of protected assets, and a notice that any attempt to alter or access the accounts without Beatrice's physical presence would be unlawful. When Serena asked to access the joint account, the manager checked his screen and looked up, giving a calm but firm response. He stated the account was temporarily frozen due to a legal notice from the primary account holder. Serena's smile tightened. She attempted to reroute the conversation, hinting at family confusion and cognitive decline, suggesting the need for smooth transitions. The manager did not budge, citing protective measures issued by a court. Marcus remained silent, his jaw tense. Serena pressed further, her voice rising, pulling out their prepared letter as if it were an official decree. The manager merely shook his head. There was nothing he could do. When Serena refused to leave, security was called. Marcus tried to dismiss the incident as a misunderstanding, but their plan had failed before it started. Back at Arthur's safe house, Beatrice received Vivian's text. "They tried. The account is sealed tight. You're safe." Beatrice felt a deep realization. They hadn't just tried to take money. They had tried to erase the boundary between love and control, between concern and conquest. They had run into the one thing they didn't anticipate: silence backed by law. Beatrice did not announce her move. She left the house early, carrying her single bag. Before Arthur drove her away, she slipped one envelope under the front door. Inside she placed 3 items. A printed copy of the audio recording, Serena's clear, cold voice discussing temporary guardianship like a grocery list. A letter in Beatrice's handwriting. It was not bitter, but a quiet account of what she saw, heard, and chose. She wrote, "The moment you decided I couldn't make decisions, I made one." A single page from her old yoga journal, featuring a quote she had underlined years ago: "When they believe you're weak, they forget you still remember." There was no public scene, no confrontation, only silence and a sealed letter. At Arthur's new place, Beatrice began building small, peaceful routines. Vivian later confirmed the court approved a full block on any financial movement from her old accounts, and that Beatrice could begin the reassignment process. Beatrice told Vivian no. Instead, she directed the assets into a new foundation, a quiet organization for women over 60 who needed help reclaiming control over their money, their voice, and their dignity. She realized that peace did not require an apology, but the decision to stop waiting for one. Dignity, she learned, doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just leaves the door gently and never returns.